I wouldn't say I hate IPOs completely, but it wouldn't be a far stretch of the imagination. The entire concept is kind of a double-edged sword. What's going on, guys? I'm Brian Bowers and this is My Money. Now, despite this year's manic panic, market correction, manipulation, inflation, and all the other things that have been going on in 2021, this has been the year of IPOs, and it really has. I mean, there's been some doozies. In fact, we are breaking records over here. As marked, this is the highest IPO year count in history. We're looking at 767 IPOs, which is essentially a 200% increase over last year at this same exact time frame, and even more so from 2019 data. The market is going absolutely bananas, and I'm all for it, but I wanted to share with you guys a position that I've had with an IPO and tell you about my experience. Now, I'm not sure as of right now, but I think I might make this segment its own folder on my channel where I discuss newly issued IPOs and the companies behind them, give my views and my positions that I've taken. I think it'd be really interesting. So just to clear the air for those that don't know, an IPO is called an initial public offering, which is essentially just the process that a new company goes through to bring their company to the market by offering shares of their business to the public. Now, without getting too much into detail about how the process is set up, the requirements, rules, and regulations, basically a business decides on an IPO for many different reasons, but the most obvious is because they want to raise capital to expose the company's public image, increase its range, its prestige, as well as to help with future sales and profits. In addition to the obvious benefits, a company garners a lot of popularity from the standpoint that it is now sharing success of the business by giving the public the opportunity to buy fractions of it. There's not a whole lot of big steps businesses can make. There's only like three, basically. Number one, it's creation. Number two, it's IPO. And number three, it's closure. And that's pretty much it. That's all. An IPO is a massive deal to a business. And this is even more true if a company's popularity before going public is just as big, just like the one company I'm going to be talking about. The business that I want to bring up is Dutch Bros. I was super incredibly excited for this IPO release because I've been a fan of Dutch Bros for like 10 years now. And of course, admittedly, I don't think I've ever filled out one of those frequent buyer cards that they have there, but I've been there enough times to know it's a hopping place. Whenever I drive by, there's always like 10 cars deep in the parking lot. I mean, they are slamming. The service is some of the best ever. They have great products. The business model is simple, efficient, and very successful. For those that don't know, Dutch Bros first started in 1992 by two dairy farmers named Dane and Travis Bursma, I hope I'm saying that correctly, in Oregon, and basically they've been expanding on the West Coast ever since with their little quaint but effective drive-through coffee buildings. It's pretty awesome to see. It's very distinctive when you see them. Now, Dutch Brothers can primarily be found on the West Coast, so if you're ever here, try to look for one. It's based on company map of current and future openings. They are starting to expand eastward and opening more and more buildings in each state and slowly expanding eastward. Now, Dutch Brothers didn't invent the wheel when it comes to drive-through mobile coffee places. Admittedly, they weren't the first. You know, seeing a drive-through coffee stand wasn't necessarily a new thing to see back in the 90s even, and they weren't all that effective, if I remember correctly. Now, keep in mind, this is also about the same time frame Starbucks was gaining and holding onto the majority of market share and expanding like crazy. Before I even get into the IPOs and the financials, of course, I really wanted to highlight some of the more interesting facts of this company and why I decided to get involved with their IPO. First and foremost, starting a business is super hard. Running it is even harder, and making it uber successful like some of the bigger companies is the hardest of all. There's no formula in deciding what makes a successful business model. You know, science has actually gotten pretty close to it, but it's still an incomplete process if you ask me. Dutch Brothers is not an exception, but they have proven it takes a bit of magic to succeed, and they have certainly done so. Okay, so the first thing that's really fascinating about Dutch Brothers is they do in fact have a unique business model. Now, I understand this could be many things to a lot of different people, but if you want to conceptualize this a little bit, imagine companies like, I don't know, In-N-Out or Whole Foods or Amazon or Apple. Operationally, they might look the same as a few other businesses of their type. However, who they are, what they stand for, and what they can offer to the public is basically unique and distinctive. Most of all, if not all the time, this is achieved by a very special product or service or experience. Dutch Bros, they have all three. Since coffee is substantial staple of the American public for the foreseeable future. And as far as I'm concerned, they are operationally in an attractive market with a proprietary product, like, you know, what's some of the drinks that they have? The Double Torture and the Golden Eye. It's basically obvious to understand why they are a specialty built for the fast lane, and they do a great job of taking market share away from businesses that operate in a more rigid and slower marketplace. Let's say like, you know, Starbucks or Pete's or something like that, which just goes to show you that businesses don't have to necessarily reinvent the wheel. They just have to achieve a unique business angle. Also, Dutch Bros offers franchises to fellow employees, so there's basically a reward system built in place. Managers who have developed skills for years and years of working, who basically want to reach the next level in the company, are given an option to own and operate their own building. That's pretty cool. Now, there are benefits to this as well. By franchising method, it gives the business the opportunity to hire seasoned employees that already know the operations very, very well. And of course, this helps maintain continuity in the business and to ensure leadership has relevant experience. The number 2 thing on my list is culture. Now, this is a big one, as I'm pretty sure you guys can agree, culture in a business is massive. It's not rocket science to say that consumers will pay more money to go out of their way to obtain an experience or a specific product or service than they can at somewhere else. This can be attributed to a lot of different things. Like some consumers of Dutch Bros say it's because of how they feel when they approach the building. Dutch Bros they've obtained like the nickname, the in and out of coffee, basically is the nickname for Dutch Bros. And it's a fun work environment for the employees, great rewards program, the coffee tastes amazing, and they also support local charities. So if an employee is generally happy at their place of employment, from a very generalized point of view, it makes the consumer happy to want to be a part of that experience as well, which does directly correlate to a business's bottom line. If you drive it to the window, you hear music playing, the whole staff are bouncing around, having a great time, they are happy to be working there. This translates into something more like a culture rating, where there's good management, it's fun to work there, the pay is good, turnover is low. This must be a great place to work, and by extension, a good investment. So number 3 on the list comes down to operational diversity. What you sell and how you sell it and when you sell it, and the ability to change with the tides is massively important to business operations. It really is. Every successful business out there at one point in time has had to create some sort of degree of change and adaptability. It really is that easy. You can ever look at several examples, like take Frito-Lay with Doritos and all the flavors they've had and products that they had to come up with, and you know, you can just tell they've been churning the R&D department and inventing new stuff that capture consumers' attention. Take like another example, Taco Bell. Tell me you haven't seen commercials showing you the new menu item, the new crunch wrap burrito taco, something like that. The menu, it's completely different from what it was 6 months ago, and 6 months prior to that. They're always constantly coming out with new stuff. You see, business is a constant evolution of keeping up with the times, and half the time, just keeping public interest is just as important as selling the actual product or service. Another example, for those of you who have iPhones, you know, iPhone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the iPod, MacBook, earbuds, etc. It's all that jazz. It's a constant reinventing new things to keep consumers interested. Dutch Bros, for example, in relation to that, they sell more than just coffee. They got the Dutch soda, they got the lemonade flavor thing going on, they got the chai tea, they got the smoothies, the little snacks, they got different coffee shakes, seasonal items, that really cool merch. Not only do they sell those items, but they sell them at times which you can obtain them at like crazy times, you know, like 24 hours a day, to make it easy for the consumer to quickly get their product and move on with their day. Number 4 on the list, is the business profitable? Now, of course, you have to ask yourself this question. If anybody wants to get involved through an IPO, this is one of the most critical components. Now, I saved this part for last simply because for the majority of you out there, this will be the most critical section of the video. Now, depending on your time frame and your profitability margins and temperance in the market, Dutch Bros has appeared by many, historically speaking, to be very investable, both in the short and long term. To understand the financials a little bit more clearly, it's important to understand the beginning and the expansion periods of the business, and I find this to be pretty critical. starting off in the West Coast, very, very slowly in their state, slowly expanding eastward, opening more and more locations every year. So the business is growing by that metric, which is a good place to be if somebody's going to analyze you from the top down. Is the business growing? And it certainly is. And if you multiply this fact by the idea that the company plans to expand across the country with a projected store count of 4,000 locations in future years, Dutch Bros' valuation is also a good indication to its future success. Of course, it's difficult to determine this exactly, but I use historical growth as a lead indication. They started in 1992, and the IPO was September 15th, 2021. That's 29 years of operational development, expansions, branding, marketing, business development, all that. Not only that, but they have achieved major brand recognition during that same time frame, being immensely popular to the millennial crowd, the new coffee crowd. The ability to obtain more growth by moving into newer markets has been very easy for them, and it's clear to say that they are growing and successfully at that. On top of all of this, Dutch Bros has a fantastic margin, solid operating performance, and really good unit economics. They really do. Now, they are able to price their products fairly efficiently, and they understand their cost relative to their profit they received has helped Dutch Bros grow pretty rapidly. It's with great pricing strategies like these that help businesses, especially if it relates to an emphasis on consumer acquisition, of course, accurate financial projections. Dutch Bros was able to understand the financials very easily and scale their growth relative to their earnings. That's why they didn't fold immediately like a lot of new places going up. So you might be asking, where does this leave me exactly? Now, on September 15th was the initial date of the IPO. I was so anxious during this day, as I know IPOs are finicky events and evaluations were kind of all over the place for Dutch Bros. And I convinced myself basically to sell early as possible and lock in any amount of profit that I possibly could. As soon as the market opened, there was an immediate jump from the initial share price from 23 to 32. And I was pretty shocked at that. So I bought in at 34 and then I actually sold at 38, making a nice tidy profit of $1,500 depending on my share count. Now, admittedly, yes, I did paper hand it. I don't know why I did that. It's pretty much a rookie move, because the very next day the stock climbed to 40s and then 50s and then 60s not more than a week later. This, of course, is going to go down in my personal history book as one of the biggest financial mistakes I've ever made. Why is that? Well, let's consider the following. Instead of paper handing like an amateur like I did, let's just assume I left my position open with my 395 shares at 32. Instead of getting out at 38, it went to the current 52-week high at 72.50, which comes out to a whopping $28,637 minus my profit at $1,500 is $27,137. Ouch. I left $27,000 on the table because I was anxious and I paper handed the position. Ouch. So where does that leave Dutch Bros now? Well, current evaluations don't support the inflated market price at 72, admittedly, a share. However, a lot of analysts out there and critics alike don't really point to the current state of the business, citing pending future openings and massive long-term upside for long-term growth. Now, it was mentioned that current earnings are going to be spent, organizing upper management now that the business is public and shift operation to a long-term sustainability type of business. And I don't really know what the future holds for Dutch Bros, but I do know that they make fantastic drinks. The business is growing and the outlook appears positive for the long term. And that is all I have for you guys today. And I will see you in the next one.